Let's get into our first topic. Are the Reform Party winning you over? They've taken the so-called Labour safe seat in Runcorn at its by-election by just 6 votes. Very close there. So did you vote for them? Are they the clear party of choice for you? How about Nigel Farage as Prime Minister? How does that make you feel? Give us a call. 0207 862 2222 is the number that you need. Larry, would they have got your vote?
Well, I couldn't vote this time because I'm between homes. So I've got not an electoral roll. However, I don't know is my honest answer. I just don't. I feel who else is there? I think that the Tory party, well, they're not worth voting for. And then you've got Labour government, which, in my view, are not doing a terrifically good job. Every day, I can actually understand, I live in Kent, and I can understand the feeling in Kent about the small boat arrivals. Every day there's more footage of more people arriving. And if you've got that happening and they're going to hotels and we're paying for it all and yet you've taken away the winter fuel allowance from old people. It feels at the moment like the country is both a shambles and is getting worse by the day. So Reform are a new party, so they appeal in that way, and they do appear to be plain speaking. Now, you either like what they had to say or you don't, but there's no shilly-shallyings.
Matthew, are they winning it? And it was a close by-election, but they have also won a mayoral seat with Dame Andrea Jenkins becoming Reform's first mayor, if you like. Are they winning it because there is a sort of a plague of both your houses from the British public? The Conservative Party seem to be falling apart. Labour are not very popular. Keir Starmer is not a popular reader. His personal ratings are minus double digits. Are Reform filling that gap because they are protest votes, or do they have policies that people are saying, yeah, I like that, I like what they have to say, I'm going to give them my vote?
I think it's partly because the Tories were so resoundingly rejected at the last election 10 months ago. They've been in power for 14 years with a bit of Lib Demery at the start, and people felt they had failed. So Labour got in off the back of that, not particularly because people felt very strongly about a Labour government. They wanted to get rid of the Tories. Where are we now 10 months later? Well, as you say, we don't have a particularly popular Labour government. And that's partly through some, I think, unforced errors, like the winter fuel allowance being taken away from some pensioners. And I think that got them difficult headlines. But it's also because the country is in a bit of a mess. And that's partly because of 14 years of Tory rule, and it's partly for other reasons. I think things have been going largely downhill since the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. So whoever were in number 10, it would be very tricky. However, would Reform get my vote? Absolutely not. Why? They don't have the answers. It's perfectly possible that Farage could be our next Prime Minister if between them the Tories and Reform win the most seats and manage not to split the vote on the right as they did last year. And if Reform is the bigger of the two parties, Farage indeed could become our next Prime Minister, which until recently was unfathomable. But that doesn't mean things will get better. Things will not get better. I would argue they would get worse. I'll give you a couple of quick examples. Let's look at the National Health Service. Farage doesn't want that to be funded through general taxation. I think that would lead to a two-tier health system. I can give you other examples if you want.
Well, let's chat to former Brexit Party MEP and a very enthusiastic member of the Reform Party and friend of the show, of course, Belinda de Lucy. Hi, Belinda. Good morning.
Good morning. Lovely to see you all.
You must be thrilled today.
I couldn't sleep last night. I was so emotional. It genuinely feels like the reform revolution is underway, despite attempts to demoralise the nation to accept decline, despite attempts to smear ordinary Brits as far right for just wanting fair play. You know, the burnt and betrayed British electorate are fighting back. And I just say, legends, you are all legends, reformers, with your unconquerable souls. And I'm so happy today. It feels like we've really got a mega foot in the door. And what I think is more concerning for the Labour and Conservative parties than just losing some council seats is hope. Last night will have inspired so much hope to the millions of Brits who have given up on voting because the two parties are both big tax, hypermass immigration, net zero, wokery, ECHR members. There was no other alternative, no option to represent those voices that haven't had a party to vote for that's viable. And that has all changed.
OK. Is Do you feel that there is a daunting task coming up for reform? Because Dame Andrea Jenkyns now actually has an official role. She's going to be in charge of a budget. You will have a record to answer for. And that's not to diminish the role that local councillors play. Of course, they're a very important part on a small local level. But now on a national level, you will have a record to answer to. Are reform ready for that?
I genuinely believe we are. Reform are taking this very, very seriously indeed. I remember doing the March to Leave with Dame Andrea Jenkyns back in 2019 during the Brexit years, spent time with her. She's deeply authentic, passionate politician who cares for the people and for this country, and to put the interests of the British people first for once, which has been severely lacking with the two parties. I think she's completely up to the job, as is Sarah Ponchen in Runcorn. And I mean, incredible swing to reform. You know, where Lincolnshire is, that's a very safe Tory territory. Okay. And where Runcorn is, that's Labour. And reform are taking from both. I think it's really exciting political times.
All right, Matthew has a question.
Yeah, Belinda, I mean, you talk a good game. You and I know each other, but this is all hot air. And let's look at some of what Andrea Jenkyns wants to be policy. She wants asylum seekers, people who are coming to this country because they want to escape dangerous regimes.
Or get a job.
She wants, and some of them are indeed illegal migrants, but some of them are, about half of them, I suspect.
I don't know.
But that's what the figures suggest. Half of them are asylum seekers. She wants them intense. Now, that to me, and she also talks about British values, that to me does not smack of British values at all. And Richard Tice, your deputy leader, he keeps telling us that under a reform government, you would be sending asylum seekers and illegal immigrants back to France. You'd be depositing them at French ports. He claims that that is legally possible. I can tell you, with a fact check, it is not. This is hot air,
Matthew,
and reform don't have the answers.
Matthew, what the political liberal class find hysterically offensive, the majority of British people don't. We want someone to be plain talking. And France, and Andrea's not talking about all asylum seekers. She was mentioning the men coming from the safety of France, coming from a safe country, using British taxpayer money to fund their life here when France puts them into tents. So why don't we start looking at the option? It's a particular group, not, of course, genuine asylum seekers coming from other countries who come here, go through the due process. Secondly, we have incredible policies that are really attracting people. This is not a protest party.
Okay.
We have, you know, your hot air, Matthew, about it just being a nothing with no answers. That stinks of fear.
Okay.
Fear because reform has a good chance of winning.
Okay, Belinda, thank you for joining us. Always good to hear from you. Thank you so much. Belinda de Lucy there. I want to get to your calls because loads of you are getting in touch. And let's hear from someone who's in Runcorn. Sue has got in touch. Sue, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. Hello, everybody.
Sue, a good day for you. Are you celebrating?
Yeah, how can I say? I've voted Conservative all my life.
Yeah.
And then even on the last election, I still voted Conservative. After all what Boris has done and what he hasn't done. But I will never, ever vote Labour. They've come in, OK, people wanted them in, and they've come in. And what have they done? They've made us poor, poor, poor.
Okay, I mean, just to balance that out, Sue, just to balance that out, if as there's no Labour person here on the panel, but they would say they've reduced NHS waiting lists. They've sent back people that don't have the right to be here, failed asylum seekers at record levels, the highest since 2018. Do you feel that doesn't count?
I think they tell lies.
You think it's a what?
I think they tell a lot of lies.
You think so they've brought down waiting lists for all of us on the NHS time and time again. Yes, of course, there's a huge amount more that needs to be done to save our NHS, but it can't happen overnight. And you say they've made us poorer. What is it? 3 million people who've had their minimum wage raised? I mean, that's literally making people better off, isn't it?
Hang on. Yeah, I feel like Sue and I are living in a parallel universe, which is actually what it feels like to be in Britain at the moment. And what it feels like is, I agree with Sue, we feel poorer. If you run a pub or a restaurant, you're struggling. I run a small business. It's really difficult out there. We don't feel, particularly small business owners, that we got any help from the government, quite the reverse. If you live in an area outside London, if you live somewhere where they love green and pleasant land, and you're seeing a solar farm being plonked in the middle of your valley, or you're seeing a housing estate, despite local opposition, being plonked near you, we feel that our lives have been made worse by the Labour government, not better. And I think that's what reform are playing into.
Let me get back to Sue. So, Sue, did you vote for reform yesterday? You said you've been a lifelong Conservative voter. You'd never vote Labour. Did you vote for reform?
Yeah, and I did, yes.
And do you feel hopeful with the new MP? Do you think your life is going to change?
I just think give somebody a chance. Because, yeah, and he's fresh.
But it matters who you decide to give a chance. I get the frustration. I certainly get the frustration with the Tories, and I've already acknowledged that this Labour government isn't very popular so far, partly through their own unforced errors. But you say give someone a chance. Who are you giving a chance to? Someone who is selling you a story that is not going to work out in your favour. And we will find out quite possibly, because, as I say, it is possible that Farage becomes Prime Minister.
But if Cooper sold us her story, she was going to smash the gangs. Well, we've got record numbers of people coming to the UK. So every party sells a story. The problem is that the Labour Party said we're going to have a growing economy. Well, that's not a lie. We're going to smash the gangs.
It's not a lie. It's not a lie. It just hasn't happened yet. No, hang on.
Okay.
No, they say they're going to try and grow the economy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be done.
It was a budget for growth. It's clearly not a budget for growth because we're not growing.
There's a difference between intending something that doesn't happen and lying. I think that's an important distinction.
All right, Sue, thank you for kicking us off. Let's speak to Carla, who's in Gloucestershire. Carla, have reform won you over?
Oh, goodness, no, not a chance in a million. And I agree with Matthew, although I'm actually a Liberal. So I would love something like Mark Carney to be leading the country. But
he's busy being the Canadian Prime Minister at the moment, so he's got his hands full. But why reform not winning you over?
Oh, gosh. Well, for a start, you see, the thing is that they're hot air. And it's not just that. It's very easy for Nigel Farage to whip people up into a frenzy. He's very good at doing that, but very little else. And can you honestly, look at him as an MP for his local constituents. Honestly. And then you've got two members of the party who've defected to go and live in Dubai because they don't want to pay taxes. It's actually a compliment to pay taxes in the country that you're living in, because taxes actually help us.
Why do you think that we've seen reform become as popular? They won Sue over. Lowri's saying that Labour are failing to make people feel better off, even though they may be able to say, as Matthew was pointing out, we've reduced waiting lists, we've increased people's minimum wage, but people are not feeling it.
No, I agree, because you see, it's very difficult to find a clarity. And I think whilst Labour have done some very good things, the sad thing is that it's shocked people about their policy, to target vulnerable people on
the winter fuel allowance. Yep.
Yes, and. So, I think PIP is a different thing. I think it just allows somebody to have a life when they're clinging on to life as it is, because they're trying to desperately get up if they're disabled.
Yeah.
To take that away from people, that really, they're often desperate. And that's what shocks me about Labour. But, you see, I'm Liberal, so everybody scoffs at me usually.
No one's scoffing at you here, and I hope they don't. Everyone's entitled to their opinions. Carla, thank you for giving us yours. Let's move to Leslie, who's in Manchester. Leslie, have reform won you over?
They didn't need to win me over. Nigel Farage I've been the supporter of Nigel Farage for a long, long time.
Right.
It's about time that people started thinking about English people, that our country started thinking about English people and not keep thinking about people coming into the country and all that involves. And when you're talking about shorter waiting times.
So do you think... So Leslie, I'll come to the waiting times in a second, but you were saying, about English people. From what you were saying, I take it you're concerned about immigration and the crossings, the small boat crossings. How's Nigel Farage going to come in and solve all that? What's he going to do? What has he said that's convinced you that actually he, and only he, has the answer? What is it?
Because he cares about English people. And
a lot of people care about English people. What's he actually going to do?
I care about English people, Leslie. I go to every single England rugby, cricket, football game that I can manage to afford to go to. I'm a passionate English person. This idea that you don't care about English people if at the same time you don't want to treat people coming over from France in those boats with total contempt, that is for the birds. It just doesn't add up. Part of what it is to be an English person or a British person is to care about the vulnerable. And of course we should care about the British vulnerable. But that doesn't mean that we have to put people in tents.
Well, let Leslie come back, because I'm interested. What has he said that's convinced you that he can solve this problem?
I have no idea how he's going to solve this problem.
Right.
He hasn't said how he's going to solve this problem, but I believe that he will do it. I believe he will do it.
Okay.
I have 100% faith in him.
All right, Leslie, thank you. Thank you for giving us your thought. Hilary is in Warwickshire. Hilary, welcome to the show. Reform won you over.
No, I haven't got, I'm 76, I haven't got dementia, but all I think they do is talk the talk. And I like our local politicians, and I always vote Lib Dem because they do everything that we need in the area in which I live.
Did you vote in the locals yesterday? I think Warwickshire had some council elections. Did yours have?
Yes.
And you voted?
I always vote Lib Dems.
And out of interest, Hilary, did you get a lot of door knockers from Reform or from Labour? Did you get Reform knocking on your door trying to convince you?
No, I just got. I know the name of the lady, and she puts something through the door.
Right.
And she does everything locally, bus stops and traffic, etc.
Yeah.
And she's absolutely fantastic, and that's why I've always voted.
And Hilary, do you vote for the Lib Dems on general elections as well? Because so many people vote differently sometimes for their locals. They might vote for one party because they have that connection with their local councillors. But when it comes to general elections, they're voting for who they want to put in number 10. Do you vote differently in general elections?
Well, yes. I always vote for Keir Starmer.
For Labour?
But the trouble is, when I listen to politics, all they do is talk the talk.
Okay.
And I think that's a great shame.
Okay.
Can I just say I don't
Hilary,
think that's true. I think politicians, I've never put myself up for election. I have so much respect for people who do, whatever party they come from. Politicians spend almost every minute of every day trying their hardest to make things better according to what they think would make the country better. We have to have some degree of respect for what they do. They work unbelievably hard. They might get it wrong, but it's a hard challenge.
But this Labour government doesn't seem to be listening. So, for example, we've seen all the protests from the farmers, and the Labour government have not listened at all. There's a very
inheritance tax.
Well, there's a very, I think, understandable view that this Labour government is only interested in urban areas, and particularly in urban areas with high immigrant populations. That is the view if you go outside London. Okay. And the problem I have is when on this show I do with a lot of people who spend all their time apparently in London and don't actually go out and see what it feels like not to be part of that metropolitan area.
OK, well, look, we're going to be taking more of your calls on this. So many of you wanting to have your say, so we'll be taking... But first, let's get back to our big topic of the day. Our Reform Party winning you over? Let's kick off with Francis, who's in Warwickshire. Francis, welcome to the show. Are they winning you over?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I voted for Reform yesterday because I am sick and tired of the state of what is happening to our country. And my name is spelt with an E. I'm a woman, not a man.
OK, we shall have strict words with the people upstairs. Apologies for that. Now, what was it? What is it that you think Reform are going to do that's going to change?
We need somebody with some backbone to start getting this country back to the British. And I'm sick and tired.
Who do you mean when you say the British?
Native British people.
Hang on, Francis. Francis, is Alexis British? Am I British? My grandparents were Jewish refugees. Am I British?
Fine.
Is Alexis is British? Are Muslims who were born in this country or have British passport, are they British?
Our grandfathers and our fathers would all be turning in their graves at the moment.
My grandfather won the Military Cross for bravery on my mother's side because he went up to the enemy lines ahead of the D-Day landings on his motorbike and risked his life to save this country from Nazism. I can tell you what would be concerning to him is the degree of anti-immigrant sentiment that is rife in our country now.
You see, I think that's a bit sneery.
I'm sort of sneery, it's how I believe.
It sounds quite sneery, because I think that for a lot of people, there wasn't a great deal of anti-immigrant feeling unless you live in an area of the country where you've seen your whole neighbourhood altered by both legal and illegal immigration. And then if you see people abusing the system, it does make you more anti. And I think that's entirely understandable. I'm simply saying, you know, every immigrant is great. Well, we need to have the conversation.
But hang on, you talk about this. Actually, I would suggest to you that it's often in parts of the country where there is very little immigration, where people hold the most anti-immigrant views. I live in London, right? Often derided. Oh, you live in a metropolitan area, your views don't count. First of all, I tour the country, so I see the struggles of people up and down Britain. Secondly, I live in probably the most multicultural city in the world, and I love it.
Well, I come from London, and I lived until recently in a part of London where when I walked down the street, nobody spoke English. I felt like a stranger in the place I'd grown up. Now, that's quite an uncomfortable feeling, and I think people have a right to feel uncomfortable. It doesn't make them a bad person. I think that we have to accept that the mass and immigration of the last 10, 15 years has changed our country, not always for the better.
I'm going to pause you there, because thank you, Francis. I want to speak to Oswald, who's in Leicester. Oswald, welcome to the show. Have reform won you over, Oswald?
No.
Why not?
Not at all. Right. Remember the election?
Yeah.
And Conservatives, Sunak was smiling, saying that, when Labour comes in, they're going to raise taxes. Mm-hmm. Remember that?
Yeah.
Right. Why would they say that if they know what they left behind? They know they left the country in a state. And I just think that the public hasn't realised what happened.
Okay.
Because they said, they came in and they're doing this. They had to because of what they left behind.
Okay, now
and nobody's there feeling that. Yeah, go on.
Okay, but let's go back to reform. Why have reform not won you over? Forget about Labour and the Conservatives for a second. What they're offering to some people, they think, well, actually, maybe we need to give them a go. Maybe they have some policies that make sense. Why do they not make sense to you?
They're basically doing a Trump.
Right.
They're doing a Trump. I'm going to get this done. And when they're in, what they're going to do? The same thing.
And don't you agree, Oswald, that is the big challenge? And Farage admitted this himself a couple of days ago. His concern is what happens if they do win a lot of seats in these elections, because suddenly they won't just be an opposition party, they will be a party of a degree of power, and they will have to answer for their record.
Oswald, thank you. Thanks for kicking us off on that. Thank you. Let's speak to Simon in Leeds. Simon, welcome to the show. Have reform won you over, Simon?
Yeah, they've won me over for a long time now. A long time.
What is it that they're saying that appeals to you?
They're the only party that's going to do what needs doing. They're going to stop the boats. They're going to stop all these people that are coming into the country.
Right.
They're not from. They're not coming from war-torn countries.
All right. So far, most of the support, and I realise that a phone-in show does not sort of reflect sort of broad polling, but everyone's talking about boats and the immigration issue. Is that the only thing that they're saying that appeals to you? I mean, Nigel Farage yesterday or a couple of days ago says he wants the NHS, he doesn't want the NHS to be funded from taxation, right? He hasn't told us where that money is going to come from, but do they have any other policies away from immigration that you think they're going to be successful?
Well, if you get rid of if you stop the immigration problem, you improve the health service, you improve the dentist, you improve everything. My son's disabled, and every time we go to the hospital, he's waiting there 4, 5, 6 hours because there's so many people going from that in this country. They can't even speak English.
All right. Okay, I'm going to have to leave it there because I've been told we've run out of time. Simon, thank you. Interesting to get all your thoughts on that. Now,